Hi, welcome to part one of this week's Blues Talk, where John, Dave and myself are going to look back over Leinster's victory against Treviso last weekend and of course talk about our new coach who's just been hired. So boys, what about Lancaster? I mean, is it a good, bad or indifferent signing?
I think it's all positive. He's exactly what we wanted. I think he's a talented coach. I think he's an experienced coach. I think he fills gaps that were in our, if you like, the amount of coaches we had. He fills in gaps that we had. He's from outside the Leinster DNA, so he brings something different in.
Very important.
Which was something we didn't have. I mean, we had a lot of good guys, but they were all Leinster guys, which meant that they didn't. It was a certain kind of almost an incestuous relationship there, and he brings in something fresh. I've been saying for a while that the situation we're in terms of where Pro 12 rugby is now in relation to the rest of the world, in order to get a top level coach in, they have to be damaged in some way. And Lancaster does come with a somewhat tarnished
That was an unusual
reputation.
argument. A lot of people had made that, brought that point up, but nearly every single coach. I mean, even looking back at Pat Lam. Pat Lam was sacked from and every single coach, with the exception of very few.
I know, but what I'm saying is,
most coaches go out
whenever
through the back door after being fired.
Oh yeah, whenever a job comes up, people start talking about your Jake Whites and your Robbie Deans and those guys aren't going to come to Leinster because those guys can get jobs.
Because Robbie Deans and David Nucifora are in the same room, then the universe explodes.
But those guys can get Boku books elsewhere. But in order to step down to work as a unit coach at Leinster, they're not going to do it. But unless there's something wrong with their reputation, or they've had a bad experience as a head coach, which I think is what happened with we know what's happened with Stuart Lancaster.
Yeah,
he was kind of thrust into that position with England very suddenly. He was
almost like
interim coach,
exactly, and then it was they didn't renew. They only extended that interim coach. They didn't make him full time, and then eventually they made him full time. But he was there for 4 years.
He'd still have technically 4 years left in his original contract.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
he was signed till 2019 anyway. I agree. I think it's a really positive move. Most people seem to think it is. I mean, I've seen a few naysayers, not very many though. I just think he like you said it there, he bringing in the outside influence, etc. But he did so much with that English team before he got to the point where where he ran out of road. Really, I mean, he far exceeded where anybody saw him at the beginning of his tenure.
But
exceeded.
They lost one game per season.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat the All Blacks.
Yeah.
Let's not forget.
In his first 3 years, he lost. He went 12 for 15, including a win over the All Blacks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty good going. He lost one game, as you say. I mean, in against us, he lost the championships on points difference.
Yeah,
that's hard going. And of course, like we say, that win against the All Blacks, that's the holy grail of Irish rugby, and he has one in his Irish pocket, and it was a very good win as well. I mean, that England team was poisonous. Well, their reputation was dirt.
He had to do an awful lot of root and branch clearing out.
Yeah,
it was like the
just after that World Cup.
He had more work to do than the lads working on the Irish glass bottle site had, in terms of cleansing the absolute stench, the miasma of filth around that England team. It was poisonous. I mean, it really was. Advertisers weren't interested. The guys were acting like arseholes. I mean, they were tossing dwarves, jumping off ferries, fiddling with waitresses. I mean, it was a really, really bad team. I mean, if it happened in a football club, you'd be disappointed. I mean, it was all bants all the time with that England team, and he changed that.
He did. The other thing you'd have to say about it is there isn't a big long list of people who are available at such short notice.
So you have to take your hat off to Leinster. Like, I mean, the thing with McQuilton, it was a family situation that just arose. He made a fairly quick decision that he had to go home for it.
Mm-hmm.
So Leinster probably had a window of 2 or 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And they hired like a former England coach. It's not.
That's pretty impressive.
You have to say. I mean, I've been critical of Leinster Rugby's recruitment over the last, say, 18 months.
Who's out there though? It's him or Eddie O'Sullivan.
But they went out and they got a guy, and not just any guy. I mean, this is a guy with a big reputation. He's a big guy. He's a big name to have. And it also shows, and in my opinion anyway, there's been a certain amount of talk about will he undermine Leo, and will there be kind of Will there be an Axel Erasmus kind of interface here? And I don't think there will, because I think Leo has shown that he is entirely without ego and entirely without a lack of confidence in his own ability to manage strong personalities and big personalities, and he's done it. And he's gone out again. This is the second time he went out and he got Graham Henry, and now he's gone out and he's got Stuart Lancaster. I mean, he only wants what's best for Leinster. I mean, I don't think there can be any question about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was only joking about the Eddie O'Sullivan thing. Like, no offense to Eddie, but you know, he wouldn't. He's famous for having things his way or the highway. So you know, I'm not sure how that'd fit in with the current Leinster coaching setup. Whereas Stuart Lancaster is just, he looks like he's just dying to get in there. From the press conference, the body language between himself and Leo looked really good. It looked like
Leo
looked like he was thrilled to have him there, and Stuart Lancaster looked like he was thrilled to be there. Now, even with all of that, the coaching setup may not gel. They may not have complementary skills. It may not all be wonderful, but you know, there's certainly a chance that it could be.
Don't be for lack of trying.
And it won't be for lack of trying. Guys like that are driven, and they want to, you know, they start at what's good for the team and work backwards. They don't worry about what's good for them or what'll make them look good.
Well, they see what's good for the team as being what's good for them. The two things are complementary.
And I think that's what will make them gel, because like Stuart Lancaster, fairly well a man without ego. Gervin Dempsey, fairly well, like he's demonstrated his last year. He kind of mentored Rob Kearney and did anything that needed doing in Leinster as a player, and has done ever since. Leo Cullen, a man without it. You know, there's a guy who's always stood, you know, out of the limelight when he could. So from that,
this is a guy who pretty much gave away all his cup lifts, for example. I mean, that was for the good of the squad and for the good of other guys. That's the kind of guy Leo is.
That's an interesting point, because, you know, say Sexton has alluded to it, Jennings alluded to it, that there's, let's say, the culture has slightly shifted from the glory days
to glory boys, maybe.
To maybe so, yeah. And, you know, we wonder if Lancaster's going to come in and maybe try and deconstruct some of that.
I'd say he's the ideal man to do it. You know, anybody showing a lack of commitment or lack of, you know, trying to rest on someone else's laurels, which is allegedly what has been going on with some people, then they're going to have they're going to have him taking them down a peg or two as needed, and they'll probably be glad of it.
Yeah.
You know, if everybody can get to the place where they're singing off the same hymn sheet, I mean, that's what every team wants, and it's very complex. Like, there's 80, 90, 100 people involved.
Oh, with very different personalities.
It's very
and
complex
egos and
to
different needs and different wants.
Blend it all together. But if you've three guys at the top who are obviously so obviously doing it for the team and humble and all that kind of stuff, you know, it can only permeate. You know, okay, big egos do, you know, the Steve Jobs type thing does work as well in a different way, but not necessarily with a team sport. It's harder, I think, to make that kind of stuff gel with the team sport when you've got one Führer. I think you're better off having a complementary set of.
Well, there's basically two kind of management styles in most sports, whether it's rugby or soccer or American sports or whatever. One is the autocrat, like your Eddie O'Sullivan, like your Alex Ferguson, who is the be all and end all, runs everything, all funnels through him. He's the
selling
dictator,
the tickets,
he's primus inter pares, primus inter ales indeed. Whereas, and then the other way is the collegiate style, which we have seen before. We saw it under Michael Cheika, we saw it under Joe Schmidt. Joe Schmidt like manages everything, but he also lets other guys free to do their own things.
Cheika was fairly headstrong now.
He was initially, but he realized quite quickly.
He got the gaffer in.
Yeah, he realized quite quickly that it wasn't going to work. Being that kind of guy, he needed strong inputs from other guys, from the likes of John O'Gibbs, from the likes of Alan Gaffney. He brought those guys into the setup. Gave Kurt McQuilkin a huge role within the management of Leinster Rugby.
And the original team was Brewer and Noxie.
Yeah,
like, you know, and they
poisonous though.
They were at loggerheads completely. So he knew he had to clear them out and bring in Gaffney and Gibbs, which he did to great effect.
Cheika was a very strong personality and a very strong manager, and at the end of the day, what he said went, and that's the way it'll be with Leo Cullen as well. But for what he says to go, he'll take all the inputs from everyone and he'll listen with open ears, and and that's what Leo will do. I mean, but having somebody like Stuart Lancaster giving you advice or giving you his and the guy is we were talking about it. He is a defense coach. He was working in defense with counties up until last week.
I think his background is kind of like he came up
more
through
of a backs
but he kind of came up through coaching youths and I wonder if he'll get involved with sort of the Leinster Academy and even below that.
He will do. He already said
sort of going down as far as even with some of his underage teams.
Elite player development, which I know doesn't necessarily mean academy lads, but I suppose it does really.
Yeah, it does.
Developing them into elite players. So I can see only good things out of that. It's very, very hard to see.
It was
the only thing I can see can go wrong really is that the personalities don't
just
gel.
doesn't work, yeah. But it won't be for want of trying on the part of the. It was weird actually because I was in the Horse Show House before the match on Saturday, and who was wandering through it looking for someone, and now maybe I know who it might have been. It was Andrew Farrell. I wonder, was he looking for Stuart?
Might have been.
Have a chat.
Anyway, well, speaking of last Saturday, we had our first game against Treviso, which was Friday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And got away with a nice,
Friday, yeah.
got away with a nice victory, 20 points to 8.
Not quite nice enough.
Wasn't nice enough. No, it was two great things about it. One, we have an out half, and two, we have a maul. We scored 2 tries with one and one with the other.
Let's not get carried away. One, we have an out half and a maul against Treviso.
Of course.
And much improved to Treviso, though.
And much improved Treviso.
Well,
actually,
that was my next sentence.
Yeah, we were talking about culture, and before the match, and indeed in interviews during the week with like Murray Kinsella, Kieran Crowley, who's a great coach, and would have been a coach I would have been happy to see at Leinster.
He was rumoured to be joining us after the World Cup because he was coaching Canada.
Was talking about how one of his biggest jobs before he gets anything done with Treviso is getting the culture right, because Treviso's an old club with a proud history, and he has to get that right before with the current guys before he can do anything with it. And he seems to have started that way. But at the same time, when you're going into a season, you're looking at your season, you're plotting out your season. You're talking about, for the 2 Italian sides, you're talking about maybe getting, 19 points.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a banker.
We have no
5
slipway
points.
now at all.
5 points at home to Treviso is kind of, the job is not done until you get that fourth try.
Yeah, it was a fairly mixed bag of performance, but there's a couple of things as you mentioned. You did mention Carberry, of course, but I thought, for me, Keane Healy looked like he was back. He was very hungry.
Yeah.
He looks like he's lost a few pounds, and definitely looked like he wanted to get involved with the action, which is good to see because he wasn't trying too hard, which, in say
he was relaxed. He looked like a relaxed Keane Healy. The Keane Healy from when he was 21 or 22. Before he started getting worried about whether he was big enough and started putting weight on to try and take on some of the power tight heads that were coming through. And
he has what's his name to do that now? He has his new understudy.
Yeah, well, he's a couple of understudies indeed. And I tell you, I would not like to be trying to pick loose heads when everybody's fit and well and available.
It's a fairly competitive position now, isn't it?
Well, there's 4 really good loose heads. Really good. Because Porter looks ridiculous. Like, really is. He's the kind of guy you need, hitting, and he's going to be coming on. I'm assuming he'll be benching again next week rather than Jack McGrath appearing.
Unless they use Peter Dooley.
They could do, and Dooley's a great player too.
He's a very good player.
He doesn't have he probably has more technical ability for the extra year or 2 of experience, but he doesn't have the raw power that Porter has. And you said it yourself. We saw him deconstructing John Afoa in a scrum. We've seen him running through people in the Bath game as well, running through big lads. And that's the kind of stuff you need, punching holes for your backs. So long may he hit fuckers.
There was lots of guys played pretty well. I mean, nobody played badly. I don't think anyone.
Nobody had a shocker. No.
Badly. Lots of guys played pretty well. I thought Dominic Ryan played well. I thought Dan Levy played well. I thought Josh Van der Fleer played well.
Back row was pretty good.
The half-backs were pretty good. I thought the centres were not quite so good. They were the disappointing part of the
disappointment for me was that Ringrose had 13 on his back, but he played 14.
I thought he was going to be playing on the wing.
Why bother sticking 13 on his back? Was
Misdirection.
It to confuse people? Wasn't very confusing after about 3 minutes.
He was getting hypothermia on the wing because he hardly got the touch of the ball.
Yeah, but when he did, he looked good.
See, this could well be like just long term planning. I mean, get him used to playing there because when Henshaw comes back, you know, that's probably where he's going to be playing. So
But at the risk of overhyping Joey Carberry, which everybody is doing at the moment, I said last week about time on the ball, he just,
Well,
like his
we
tries.
have a couple of his tries, or his 2 tries.
Yeah, perfect time to look at them. I actually missed the first one. I wasn't into the ground when it was scored.
you know, I was queuing up for a pint of no Hop House 13, which was a disgrace. But anyway, yeah, it was actually good play all the way in
See,
this.
Zane Kirshner did do something. He played scrum half there.
They look so bizarre with the blonde hair. I mean, it was a great cause and it was huge sum raised, but they all look quite weird.
They're allowed to look weird. He got it quite close to the goal line, but he had so much to do. He had to get through 3 or 4 players and reach over as well. And power involved. There was everything involved. There was deception. There was, but you just kind of felt that he was going to score, even though he had a couple of guys to beat. I think it's a couple of phases away now.
It's the next. He comes back into the middle now. Great footwork there from Ringrose actually, because he could have quite easily died with the ball and accepted the ruck, but he didn't. Levy comes from lovely and deep there as well.
Yeah.
And then
look at that.
Yeah.
Like, he had no right to get through there.
He's not a small man.
He stepped he's 6 foot.
Yeah.
He's 85
I
kilos.
saw him in Kylie's after the Bath game, and he is not a small man.
He's well, I suppose for an out half he's chunky enough, all right. But you can see it here.
Like he had
that was
3
a
or 4
forward,
defenders,
but he had to beat forward him, and the last one was hanging out of him while he reached over. That's like the presence of mind to do all that, and the confidence to go for all that is.
You have to say it was an extremely impressive debut.
Absolutely.
I thought it was a very good debut.
Unbelievable.
At the time I wasn't sure about it because
You were disappointed that we didn't get 4
I was
tries.
disappointed we didn't get the bonus point, and there was a lack of shape on the game. But when
That's down to Treviso, though.
Yeah, that's
Hugely.
what I was gonna say. When I got home and I watched the game again, obviously that's what I was going to say. I mean, we looked like a team that was playing its final warm-up game, which we said last week, if you remember. To a certain extent, there was that element to it. But Treviso were not doing the usual Italian thing of bending over and allowing and accepting whatever 5 points that we were going to.
I think you can see Crowley's stamp on them already.
His cultural thing.
I'm not saying they're league winners or anything, but I just think they've improved.
Carberry played
noticeably.
Carberry played an awful lot across the back line before he came into the Leinster setup, with a tie and with Blackrock. Played a full back as well, and you could and on the wing, and you could see that in his second try. The way he took the opportunity.
This is just outrageous. And there's a turnover. I think Josh van der Fleer. It was just before that. But how he got through there in the first, then the confidence to step the
that's
full
the
back.
impressive part.
To step that full back was, and then he had the pace to burn him as well after he stepped him. And the balance at the beginning to get through where he did, it was a prop, but he had to take the ball and get the centre of gravity right and get through 2 players. Like, that's the one where he just burnt him there.
We takes the guy on the outside. That's the impressive part for me.
And he had the confidence.
Yeah,
a lot of guys would have kicked through there or looked to pass.
If you listen to all the guys, ball in 2 hands. He had the ball in 1 hand there. He was only doing one thing. Exactly. He wasn't passing.
He had the ball in the wrong hand, indeed. Technically, if you were told you always had the ball in the.
Well, that might have been misdirection that he was going to go inside instead of outside. But anyway.
No, I thought it was a very positive debut.
Yeah.
I'd like to see how he not controls the game, but how he shapes a game when he's up against somebody like. Well, I'd say we'll see.
See this week.
But we'll come to that in part 2. I thought it was a decent performance from him. I thought it was a decent enough. There was a lot of 6 out of 10s.
But you could see it was the first game of the season.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
It was rusty.
Plenty
it
of
wasn't going to be sharp. There's a lot of guys on the team who are probably playing for their position within the squad, and you could see that as well. There was a little bit lack of cohesion. One guy that I meant to say that I was delighted to see back on the pitch was Mike McCarthy. It was a long time since he's played, and a lot of rumour last year towards the end of the season with his concussion and been stood down whether or not he was going to make it back, and delighted to see,
great to see him
come back. And another guy, actually, we should also note, Ian McKinley when he
Yeah,
came
he got
on.
a got
And
great
it was
reception.
wonderful to
Even
see,
the grandstand were cheering them and going,
Well, you have
no.
to say that was a very touching and
They
nice
rattled their
moment.
jewellery.
But it was a very nice touch.
I was, yeah, and
he acknowledged it in the press
Yeah,
conference.
a lot of
afterwards.
people in the terrace waited for him to come off actually,
Hmm.
to give him a round of applause, which took longer than they expected because he was a sub, so he had to do the warm down with the rest of the subs. But no, it was great to see him get his. I mean, the last time we saw him playing for Leinster was
he was
in the
playing well.
ODS,
Yeah.
scoring a try indeed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it was a great story. And anyway, just looking back at the other couple of results at the weekend, Ulster got off to a nice start against the Dragons. Unexpected, I suppose, but they look like they're pretty much. They've hit the ground running up there.
Yeah.
The match I did watch was Munster against Scarlets.
Munster
Yeah.
were excellent.
They were
They
excellent.
were really good.
Yeah.
It was a class.
New
they
coach.
Just, it was real rope-a-dope stuff, and they just picked off
They had
Scarlets at will.
their
Yeah.
defence was almost watertight.
Really good. And, for the amount of possession they had, they were so clinical. Like this, I was kind of aghast that they were leading when they were leading. I was going, how have they've hardly had the ball? How have they had enough ball to score a try or two? So they really looked after the football. You know what I'm saying?
The pill, mate.
The pill.
Looked after the pill.
They took their opportunities when they had it. I mean, they let Scarlets have the ball, and that beat Scarlets.
Yeah,
You know,
beat
Although
themselves
Scarlets
up.
scored a lovely try just when they took the tap penalty from Quick.
Do,
Yeah.
do you know, it was one of the key things early on, Liam Williams looked like he was going to cut loose, but he never looked like he was going to pass.
yeah.
And I think they copped that on and just went, right, he's not passing, let's just cripple him anytime he gets the ball. And, he wasn't as prominent in the later stages of the game. He just, great player. I really like him as a player, but Munster had his number. And they did so much with so little ball. Won the game comfortably.
It was actually
In
quite
the end.
disappointing how the lack of penetration from that Scarlets backline. Because you'd expect more from a backline with like DTH van der Merwe, Liam Williams, Ashley Parks,
Hadley Park.
uh,
You could say that about Leinster too, though.
Patchell. Yeah. But it just showed how well Munster contained them, because that's a good backline. I mean, they brought on. Did they bring on Scott Williams?
I think
They
they
brought-
did.
they
I think
brought
I
on
actually fell asleep at
They
that
brought on
stage.
Jonathan Davies, and Munster just contained them. I mean, that was very, very well done. You know?
I missed the last bit. I actually fell asleep watching the game, not because it was a boring game, but just because I was knackered.
Yeah.
Ospreys unexpectedly hammered Zebre, and Cardiff beat Edinburgh. But the other match that did surprise me was Connacht's
Oh, wow.
being thumped by Glasgow.
Glasgow were outrageous. Their line speed was just frightening.
We said about
your
Glasgow
man-
having lost the two back-to-back. This was 3 games in a row.
Yeah.
And Glasgow lost.
Glasgow's last 3 matches.
Yeah,
have been-
We're in
against
the
Connacht
sports
in the
ground,
sports
yeah.
ground, and lost 2 of them. So
Yeah.
there was an element of that about it, but there was
Yeah.
also an element of Glasgow had watched Connacht very, very closely, and Connacht don't have many weaknesses, but Glasgow picked them out and were relentless in targeting them.
Yeah, no, I was really impressed. And your man that got binned, Wilson, was instrumental in doing a lot of the chicanery. And he did get binned he could have been red carded for it, but he was yellow carded. And he's a guy you have to watch. The other thing about it was, I don't know how many injuries Glasgow got, but Connacht got shitloads. I don't think
They haven't
just
had,
haven't
they played
heard.
one game, and it was about a month ago.
Yeah.
Like they can't be. I know they had
Fighting
a
fit.
training session against.
They played Clontarf and they played
Yeah,
somebody
but
else.
like-
Well, they were unfortunate. Other teams cancelled
Exactly, yeah.
matches.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't there. It's not like they prepared badly.
No, but
they just
it was.
got unlucky.
But clearly, it's affected them
Oh, yeah,
because any
yeah.
team that goes out and ships 41 points.
But we've had 3 pre-season games, and we looked like we were blown very hard
yeah,
in
yeah,
that
yeah.
in that Treviso game.
But Stuart Hogg I thought was just brilliant.
He's
I mean,
outrageous.
it was a bit of a weekend for fullbacks with Simon Zebo getting injured and Liam Williams playing quite well for 35 minutes, and then Stuart Hogg doing his thing. I thought Stuart Hogg was just
Stuart Hogg is an outrageous.
Yeah.
He's a what do they call them in American football? The guys who run back
rapist,
with
dogfight, killer. So I'm just trying to, those are all the positions in American football, aren't they?
Well, maybe he doesn't stand up for his national anthem. I'm not sure, John.
Whatever they call the broken field runner type chap that catches the ball and runs it back at you. Those
Predator.
guys. He would make a great one of those guys. Your man, the Kiwi guy
Running
went
back.
over. Is it a running back?
Maybe.
There you go.
Jared Hayne.
Jared Hayne
Back playing league.
became one
Actually,
of
I
them.
saw his return. Actually, I was watching it there over the summer. His first game back in the NRL. Good. They still got Hangard, but I was watching. But yeah, so basically between himself, what they did was they because Glasgow used Connacht used a shooter in defence an awful lot, and Glasgow put guys with really quick feet to
In
take
between
advantage
them,
of it.
yeah.
So it was just a nice read from Townsend.
And as you said earlier about Sarto, looks fairly
Yeah, he
tidy
looks
for them
tasty,
as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
He might be like another DTH Van der Merwe
Yeah.
for them. You know, he could.
Well,
He could play better
strong back
for-
three with Sarto and Tommy Seymour on the other wing. You know.
Yeah.
But we'll talk a bit more about Glasgow in the second half of this show. Boys, thanks very much, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers.